mad idea, which is a sort of a Cayman with a GT3 engine.
When was the last time anybody did something quite as extreme?
I don't know, but I think if we invested a little bit of effort, we might be able to find out there. You can look for a long time in search of a supercar from Germany with which to upstage a brilliant new sports car built in the same country, and that's partly because so many of the ones that do exist are, of course, Porsches.
First of those specials is this, the 2010 BMW M3 GTS.
So this is an E92 series, 3 Series, if for those of you who are like me get confused by BMW model codes. The M3 that spawned it came around in about 2007. Wasn't initially fantastically well received because it wasn't quite as sharp as the one that came before. Got a V8 engine rather than a straight 6. But actually as time went on, that car got better and better and better. And a very late M3 competition is one of my favourite M3s of all time. This is unbelievably special.
At 1,530 kilos, the GTS is 75 kilograms lighter than a regular BMW M3, and in part that's down to titanium exhausts, lightweight 19-inch wheels and lighter glass.
It's much lower and stiffer, so much more precise. It's just, in a way, I think more like the GT4 RS than the SLS is, but we'll probably come back to that question in a bit. It sort of distills that lovely BMW M-ness into, or the best bits of BMW M-ness, into a car that was set up for it. I love cars of this size. They're not too big, they're not too wide, they're not too heavy, and it gets just the right amount of power to really enjoy it.
The engine amounted to a largely new V8 unit rather than just a tweaked version of the existing power plant. The bore stayed the same, but the stroke was up and power increased by 30 horses to 444 brake horsepower. That's 450 metric nags at some 8,300 RPM.
Just got a phenomenal engine, and that just pulls through all the way through that rev range. It's so sharp, and combined with a sort of sharper auto DSG dual clutch gearbox, it just has a wonderful precision to it, especially when you throw in the lightness and the sharpness of everything else that defines this car, and it just ends up being, right, on roads like this, which are a little bit more bouncy than the ones it would have been developed on. It does move around a little, but it's so special. The steering is fantastic. It's like hydraulically assisted steering as they were back then, and it's so precise, and it gives such really lovely sort of road feel back. It's not corrupted, it's not kicking around from side to side, it's just there, faithfully and smooth, and telling me what the front end is up to. It's brilliant on downshifts.
There were upgraded brakes too, making this an M car that stopped as well as it went.
Even though it's great on a circuit and it's got loads of power, it's still a thoroughly, fantastically engaging and rewarding road car at sensible speeds on poor roads like this. I really enjoy it. I really like it.
There were just 150 M3 GTSs, all priced at nearly £120,000, double the price of a regular M3. Diminishing returns perhaps, but still one of the most special M cars ever made.
Lightened, with stiffer suspension, shortened gearing, a special active differential and no less than 622 horsepower, the SLS Black Series was the special series Mercedes to end them all. It was an unusual, unconventional modern supercar though, for all sorts of reasons. And the first of those reasons is to do with this car's mechanical layout. Now this is a classic front-engined, rear-driven sports car. The kinds that brands like Mercedes used to make in the 50s and 60s, but which hasn't come to define the idea of the supercar more lately. And the reason is that this car existed as a sort of a homage to the 300 SL Gullwing of the 50s. That's when Mercedes ruled the world. That car was the fastest production car of its time. And it was based on Mercedes' racing car that won the Mille Miglia and Le Mans. And for its 100th anniversary, of course, it commissioned the Vision SLR concept car, designed it itself, and then commissioned McLaren to turn that into a hypercar. And then years later, it decided to have another go itself, which is where this car comes in. The SLS was Mercedes' own take on a sort of a modern gullwing. Mercedes made 300 of these cars, but only 15 came to the UK in right-hand drive form. And Mercedes UK values this one, its Mercedes-Benz World Museum piece, at a cool £700,000. But technically, under the skin, it was really cutting edge. It had lightweight space frame construction, it had that low-mounted V8 up front, it had a transaxle gearbox at the rear, and this version, the Black Series, it was the ultimate version. So they took 70 kilos out of the car in terms of weight, they stiffened up the suspension, they put a new rear differential on the car, one of the first torque vectoring diffs getting on for 10 years ago now, and then they got another 59 horsepower out of that engine. The SLS Black Series engine is its biggest draw. It's the dry sumped version of AMG's 6.2 litre M156 V8. It's got 8 big bore over square cylinders, and it's actually peakier than the engine from a standard SLS, producing slightly less torque over a narrower rev band, but 59 horsepower more peak power, and spinning all the way to 8,000 RPM. And in a way, the car feels like a total love letter to the 6.2 AMG V8. And it had lighter internals here, a really wide-ranging technical makeover, and it was up to 622 horsepower. That made this the first AMG with 400 horsepower per tonne. And that makes for plenty of performance, I can promise you. Celebrating that mad hot rod character. The SLS Black Series does 62 miles an hour from rest in 3.6 seconds and 196 miles an hour flat out. Faster in both cases, needless to say, than the little Porsche. It's amazingly good, this car, you know, for something so big and heavy. It controls its mass really cleverly and it steers really nicely. It's got lovely balance, but it would be much better suited to a wider, smoother, faster flowing road. It isn't totally at home on this stretch of A road, I have to say, but there is a bit of a sense of just waiting for the road surface to level out and straighten up, and then downshifting, oh, and just letting that engine go. I didn't even hit 6,000 RPM then. It's just got so much to give.
Well, I liked that BMW. Do you like the SLS?
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful thing, and it's kind of got so much going on. You know, it's a proper supercar. It's got epicness and, you know, presence, and it sort of appeals as a thing, as just a static item on a level that I don't think either of the other two can really touch, doesn't it?
Oh, I think that's fair. Yeah. And so back to the RS.
Well, you have to be into the driving experience.
Yeah, you've got to be into driving purity, haven't you, somehow?
Yeah, I mean, if you compare it with the SLS, you've got, that is kind of the ultimate vision of a kind of an AMG hot rod, isn't it? Just dialed up to 11, and it's a lovely thing to drive, but these roads make it feel big and heavy, and you're waiting for the road to sort of straighten out and calm down and flatten out, and then you can let the engine go, and then, you know, your eyes are out on stalks. But with this, every little sort of camber and twist and, you know, everything's an event. All of its appeal is about the driving experience. You know, if you're not into the driving experience, you just will not end up buying this car.
No, I think it's fair. Do you think it's true that the M3 GTS is more like this than the SLS is?
I think so, yeah. And in a way, it appeals
in a similar fashion.
Yeah, similarly, because, you know, at a sort of a fundamental level, it's just a 3 Series, isn't it? And but made extraordinary. Yeah, I think it's got a similar feel because it's smaller and a bit lighter and a bit, you know, a bit more like this in a sort of a top level type way.
Yeah. And what I love about this, mate, is I've only driven it driven it on this road, not like you've driven it a lot more than me, but it's just how sort of fingertip precise everything is. You know, your inputs are very slight compared to, you know, if you were muscling along some big cars, you have to put in quite a lot of effort, whereas this is really, you know, delicate and easy. And
yes, I mean, there is a delicacy to this which is a world away from the Mercedes, and I think probably the BMW as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think so.
It's just, you know, it's all about that sort of effortless body control. You know, for them to have preserved that Cayman feel, I think, in something like this, where they've, you know, they turned the spring rate sort of 50%, and they've given it so much more power and so much more mechanical grip, and for it to still feel like a Cayman and have that sort of delicacy and lovely, just effortless poise about it, I think is a real piece of work.
Yeah. What I like, mate, is that whereas a 911, the latest 911 GT3 RS is, the RS version feels quite track focused. This is a lovely road car, really good road car.
It is, yeah. Exactly, it's dealing with this fine, isn't it? I actually prefer it on this sort of road with the dampers turned up. We've got them on firm now. It can just deal with the surface really well, and it's firm, which is a factor certainly, but it definitely doesn't stop it from dealing with the road surface. And you can drive it as hard as you like on the road. It never really feels like it's out of its natural environment. And by the way, on the track, oh my word, it's just sensational. Yeah, I mean, mate, I cannot tell you that, because they've, you know, rose jointed the struts and you can have cup R's on it if you want, and it's got even more sort of tactile feel in the steering and yada yada yada. And then also because it revs to 9, you're not doing that thing which sometimes you do in these turbocharged modern supercars where you're always pulling for another gear. You know, you just let it pull through the range from about 5,000-6,000 all the way up to 9, and there are corners where you would expect to be in a higher gear, but you can just leave it in 4th or 3rd.
Oh, okay.
That's just, otherworldly. I mean, so good as a circuit car.
When was the last time you drove a new driver's car that was this good? It's just a long time for me.
Yeah.
But this is just a filtered, refined sports car driving experience. Like I can't quite remember the last time I got something that felt this competent but this engaging.
Yeah, it's just good at so many things. And we've had those sort of revelations, haven't we? We've had cars like the A110 and the GT86, and there have been moments where we found cars that do a particular thing, you know, so well that it's just like a sort of an ode to driving. You know, it's just absolutely textbook and brilliant. And it just, you know, it just literally takes the road apart. I'm with you, mate. I'm not sure I can remember anything as objectively as good as this.
No, nor me. Which leads us to what conclusion? I'm not sure this one.
Yeah, well,
it's bloody marvellous.
I think you can go a long way looking for a better car than this, a more sensational driver's car than this, all the way to a super rare German supercar worth £700,000 with 600 horsepower, and ultimately not find what you're after. I think you know, this is a sort of a once in several generations type thing.
Yeah. So there you have it. Thanks for joining us. We'd love it if you give us a like and subscribe. We're even better. I appreciate it more than you know. We'll be back next time. More reviews, group tests, twin tests, the odd drag race, the odd motor show, who knows, that sort of stuff. In a magazine every single Wednesday from all good news agents, or available online, and everything is at autocar.co.uk. We'll see you soon.